Wake Up, I'm Jonelle.
And I'm Karen.
Each week, one of us brings a topic to the table, something we've been wrestling with, reading about, or noticing in our own lives.
And the other reacts in real time. No scripts, no prep, just honest, intergenerational conversation about what it means to wake up as white women in a world shaped by bias, power, and inherited patterns.
We don't always agree, and it's not always comfortable, but we show up anyways. Let's wake up.
Hi, Jonelle.
Hi, Karen. How are you? How was your week?
Good. I did a lot of reflection on your psychological safety.
I love that. What kind of reflection did you do?
Well, I know that you were talking about it in the context of leadership and at work. And, obviously, I really do believe in safety at work. I think it makes for a happier environment. But in my context, I think I was using it a little bit more with my husband.
Oh, hey, but that's maybe what I wanted to bring up too, is that it was this corporate term, but I think it also can reflect in your own life and in your community, in your family. I think psychological safety is a great tool for anything.
Yeah, and I guess I was reflecting back on, that example I was using when I had asked that class, hey, do you have a question? And then, or I set it up like ask any question. And then I said, do you have a question? And I'm like, why would you ask that question? I find myself, and God, are we in therapy here or what? But when my husband asks a question or he points something out, I'm usually derogatory and saying, really? Why would you ask something like that? Or really? Why are you thinking that way? And I realized how often, like in the context of what you were talking about, like that doesn't foster dialogue.
No.
And it doesn't foster trust that what my husband in this case is going to say is going to be received in a way that's not judgmental.
Yeah.
And so I thought about that a lot. That might be a softer way of what you were talking about, but I think it was the context of judging the question.
I think
instead of being curious about the question.
I think it completely fits what we're talking about because, again, these are tools that can be used anywhere in your life.
Yeah.
And as we've said time and time again, family, I do think, is the toughest audience for conversation.
Yeah.
There's this wall of politeness that at least I can be to strangers, to hear them out, to curiosity, even friends a little bit. But family, and this is, again, it will be a continuous thing because I don't think we're alone here with this. I think, we've even gotten praise on, oh my gosh, how can you and your mom have these dialogues? Because people say, I can't have this with my parents. I can't do this. And so again, I just want to reiterate, like, we have been doing this for years, but we're not perfect with the rest of our family. We have built, I think the thing is, and this is a great example, we have built psychological safety between us.
Yeah.
You and I have worked very hard to show, even in the moments, there is still trust there that we mean the best for the other. And it doesn't mean that we're perfect, but we have built that.
Yeah.
And so this is how we can have these this conversation. But it's so hard to do that with everyone.
With everyone.
Yeah.
And I also realize, I guess it also not, when we're trying to be psychologically safe, how are we setting that up in our relationships?
Yeah.
I guess it's just a general. And maybe right now for each of us, maybe if you're in a toxic work environment and you don't feel that you can at least work on that at work.
Yeah.
But maybe in your own relationships, it's a place to start practicing. And so I did find myself going, step back, don't be so sarcastic, listen to these questions and listen to them with curiosity and don't respond so quickly.
And what is his response when you do that?
Well,
out of curiosity.
You know what? A little bit more rambling, but it's, it's me.
Like, is he surprised when you're kind of open with him?
Well, yeah, I do think so. I think it's surprising. And often there's a tenderness to dialogue instead of like, there's tension when one is short with the other. And so, and often I think my shortness comes more because I'm in a hurry than it does than I'm intentionally treat you that way. But I guess, it's listening with curiosity again.
Yeah.
What is that brave voice over victory? And so, we're trying. Thank you, Jonelle. I'm going to keep trying.
Good. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. What about you? Did you do any reflection?
Oh, that is a great question. Is there anything in my, I didn't do a direct reflection of, I think because I'm trying to I'm building this with my business, it's like something always front of mind. But I don't feel like that's a good excuse to say that there was nothing ridiculous. There's nothing this week.
Maybe you feel psychologically safe in your work, in your places, right?
I do, but it's not really fair to say to the audience because I am in a very isolated world compared to most people. I don't have to go into my corporate job. I'm work from home. I surround myself by a good community. I mean, I don't know if I want to bring this up. I did have an interesting experience recently in a group that I was invited to that I don't think I helped the psychological safety, but I also don't think there was psychological safety built in with the space. But I was invited to this like workshop for women and women empowerment and white women specifically. They found our podcast and they reached out and thought we'd be interested in doing some of this healing work. And what I found really interesting is immediately it was a space for white women apathy and to complain. And complain is a harsh word because I don't think these women felt like they were complaining, but a lot of apathy around growth and diversity and just feeling, as we've talked before, white apathy is like, we've done so much. I'm exhausted. I don't know where to go. But it was a very like white centered moment. And so
can I interrupt on that for a second? I think one of the challenges, as you described it to me afterwards, was it was framed inaccurately because I do think...
I actually think it was not framed inaccurately. I did not read it accurately.
Oh,
because I have since gone back and it was definitely... I had made assumptions because they found...
But this is a part of that whole thing.
I made assumptions because they had found our podcast. So I assumed they understood the conversations that we were coming to the table. But I also know our podcast name, White Women Wake Up, has a very bold name to it. And so later looking at it, the title is White Women Empowerment. And so I took that again more from the lens of what we're trying to do. And I think they have some part of that. I do think that is their hope because all these women genuinely were progressive women for strong, diverse, inclusion things. So I do think that was some of their goal, but it really became a space for just white women apathy. And so, and I brought up the thing that we've talked about time and time again, the idea that as a white person, as a white woman, a lot of my privilege is that I can walk away from a situation. I don't have to live in the marginalized world. And I, as a person of color who lives that every day, and there's no walking away from that world. And so I did bring that up just to hope an open dialogue around it, not to shame or judge or anything. And unfortunately, it was taken as judgment. And so it didn't spark the open dialogue that I wanted. And so anyways, going back to the psychological safety, I think like that has been on my mind a lot of, I still don't know what I could have done differently as my part in the community. Now, I wasn't a leader to build psychological safety within that space. But yeah, that has something that's kind of been on my mind for a while now of how do I go in and reframe those conversations so it could have been, and I don't know if it even would have been. Anyways, I'm actually still going to continue to go to these meetings because I'm curious and I want to talk, and I feel like this is a lot of our audience that we're talking to is white women who who are tired, who are apathetic. They've worked really hard and they're not seeing progress. And so I want to find a way to bridge that conversation, have some psychological safety within it so we can have more open dialogue and kind of continued growth. But
so this is kind of raw and not researched in any kind of way.
Okay.
But I'm kind of wondering if maybe we should stay on this topic and we just bring up my topic next time.
I mean, we totally can.
Topic is not specific to time and place, but because I think your topic about apathy is actually a topic worth having the conversation.
Okay, so podcaster listeners, this is a podcast first. Neither of us have prepared this.
We haven't prepared anything
so,
for it. But I do
see how that goes.
Because I have compassion for the language of apathy.
Yeah.
I have a lot of compassion for that. And yet, if I weigh out the sides of the marginalized, there isn't a space for apathy.
No.
Because they are living, there's the living in the burning bush, right? Or they're in the fire. And so how then, one thing that we can talk about apathy, and I know I've said this to you several times, when we don't have many listeners, not many people have promoted us because we're trying to get white women ourselves to open up to dialogue about our bias. We keep, I and you, or I more than you, because you're probably even more committed. I'll say things like, I don't know, maybe, we'll do 52 episodes and that's it. And we're on episode, 45?
45.
45.
And I say, no, Karen, we're doing at least another year.
No, we're doing at least another year. So I've had to change my criteria.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something worth talking about. So in other words, apathy is this space that drives us to sink back.
Yeah.
I'm done, I'm exhausted. And it actually, in hearing what you talked about with that particular workshop, these women were actually much more feet on the ground than I am.
Oh, and this is why I want to give them credit.
They're doing protests and they're doing small group leadership. And all I'm really doing is research and a podcast.
But there was an interesting reflection that one of them even did note that, yes, a lot of her people of color tell her that she's stepping in and actually not helpful. And so
that creates a tension.
It does.
Anyways,
and so we can go on because there's so much. I'm actually happy that this is our topic.
Yeah, but anyways, I want to talk about that because I can understand that there is a space when we feel apathy, and I'm just, again, we haven't done research, so I'm coming off they always say never serve a meal that you haven't practiced before. So we might be kind of...
But this is the core of audiences, members will listen. This is the core of actually what our conversations are.
So when I think in the word apathy, I think of kind of unrecognized space. So in other words, I've done this, I'm tired, I'm apathetic.
Yeah.
I'm losing my interest.
Unrecognized space. So I was going to say burnout. To me, it goes hand in hand with burnout.
Burnout, yeah.
Is I think a lot of, as you brought up, a lot of this apathy doesn't come from a source of dispassion. These people are passionate.
And so probably more apathy comes from having a passion that's unfulfilled.
Which is interesting because apathy in general, I don't know if that's the case for everything, because sometimes apathy truly is apathy. Like there's apolitical people who are apathetic to the world that's going around them. But when we're talking about apathy with white women, it is definitely not coming from a lack of passion. And so I think this is where it's almost like burnout.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I wonder if burnout is a better term for it.
Yeah, my mom used to say, always look up the word. So I just looked it up. Apathy is a medical symptom characterized by lack of interest, motivation, or emotional connection to activities, people, and even life itself. So I would say you're absolutely right. I would say it's burnout.
It's white women burnout. Because the thing is, and it's been, now this is really interesting, it's been coined as white women apathy because, and again...
And we even wrote about it in our book.
We even wrote about it. I mean, and who knows, here's me, I'm probably going to blame the patriarchy for being down on women again, because this is what I always think it is, but it might not be. Wherever it came from, the point is, of course, it was like a negative and a hardship that we put on women for doing hard work. Because the reality is, white women are not apathetic. They're just burned out.
They're burned out.
But again, that doesn't give the excuse.
Yeah, but it creates this space of lack of motivation.
Yes. Yeah.
Whether we say lack of interest.
Yeah.
And like, I think you said it, you hit it right on the head. We can exit this discussion.
Yes.
So it's not first and foremost.
So it's easy to take our mental health and burnout and step back.
And the truth is, we need to be part of it, because our privilege, as we've noted, it puts us in spaces of power.
Yeah.
We can be part of policy. We can be part of, influential areas that actually are something that we can do. So one of the things I wanted to, it's interesting because I've been in spaces in my life that created, and again, maybe the word isn't apathy, but created this space of lack of motivation or lack of not lack of interest, but motherhood can be one of those.
Yeah, burnout, totally.
Especially when what you're doing is changing diapers, feeding people, running out of money because all you're doing is feeding people. That can be a really hard time. And I found, what I wanted was in my life for people to surround me saying, you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. Unfortunately, that would happen, but not as often as I wanted it. And so I found to not be apathetic or to lose motivation or to lose interest, I had to change my criteria of what brought value.
Honestly, this is what
And so that was one of the things. I did that also with my business.
Yeah.
My business always didn't flourish financially. I would work long hours. Design is a very, very hard business. People want your design work for free.
Yeah.
I couldn't, and so I remember again in those spaces changing the criteria of what is valuable to me.
Yeah.
And that helped me when I was feeling apathy towards decisions I made to work in my life. Like things that I was passionate at one point that were spaces that I lost passion.
Yeah.
So I don't know. How about you?
Well, this is kind of around what I'm thinking too. And like it goes, so you said a couple things like that I want to unpack there. Is one around, you brought up kind of like you wanted more praise a little bit. You wanted more community around you. And so I think we've talked about that too, how important community is to keep thriving. So that's one thing with this space that we've said we're very lucky, because when one of us is down, the other is like, great, we can do it. And we've just been lucky in that sense because we've built a community that helps keep us going.
And I do have to say, Jonelle, in your business, you've invested in some accountability groups,
which is much.
And these accountability groups
helping me.
Have helped you because if apathy is if it means lack of motivation or interest, I'm assuming people were passionate at one point, but the apathy came about because of
then
this.
Usually burnout. Exactly. And burnout can happen because like with the business, I'm going in so many different directions and I don't know what to do. And so then I just get lost in all of it and I don't do any of it.
Yeah.
And so I do think community is, we cannot say it enough, is like, and if you don't have a community, we can be your community.
Yeah.
We have a couple loyal listeners who we love, who reach out.
Yeah.
And it just like fills our heart with so much joy because again, we want that. We want to be your community. If you don't have community, we know it's really hard. And some people don't have access to the community that we're lucky to have. So we will be your community.
Yeah.
So like really
and
hear
we're
that.
Grassroots. If we want to start a Zoom meeting, whatever it looks like.
We will do that. So just reach out to us. Yes. Say yes.
So this idea of a community,
I think is a big one.
And you do look at healthy people. Like I look at some of my friends that really exhibit some healthy behavior. And part of that healthy behavior is having communities of like-minded interest within that interest. And hopefully they can lift one. Hopefully in that community you could lift one up.
Yeah.
So community is fun.
The second one though, and I think this is like a big thing, at least, that I'm trying to like balance, and especially in this capitalist world, we're always to do more and production, all this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what leads to the burnout is find something sustainable. So this is like going back to what you were even saying of you are exhausted right now, because I kind of took a break of a lot of podcast duties over the summer.
Yeah.
And I walked away from, because I just was feeling overwhelmed. I walked away from a lot of blogs.
Don't try to read the blogs.
Yeah. The blogs are very spotty. I am sorry. Like I walked away from TikTok videos because it just was getting overwhelming. There was a lot going on and I wasn't really getting like the views, though we've now found that those views do really correlate to listen. So I need to get them back. But the point is, I stepped back and I recognized kind of what you're talking about is what are the changing your values, that at the core, the podcast and doing the work of the podcast was the strongest value. And so if I did not have energy for all of it, I needed to at least go down. And so I say the same thing to you. You have committed to doing all this research, to reading all these books, to doing all of this. Is there a way that you might need to step back for a second?
Well, I'm not like apathetic.
No, but my point is you were talking about is there a way?
No,
and reevaluate
honest,
what the core
when I read the text. So for those of you who might not have been following, every day I post something on Instagram, and amazing. I'm not a big Facebook person, and I do think a lot of white women are, so that may be a disconnect.
Missing some audience,
but I have there's a couple of things I'm trying to do on Instagram. And actually, so this goes back to the criteria that I've done for myself.
Yeah.
I love research. I love history. And so researching all the marginalized voices has been really, in fact, yesterday I'm listening to this one. I recommended this book, Citizen, a couple weeks ago, and I was listening to the Citizen on audiobooks. This one, and she was quoting Nora Thurton. Oh gosh, I forget how Nora Thurton. This is the problem with research. I forget names, but it's one of the women that we recommend.
Yeah,
and it was like, oh, was a writer from the early 1920s. She was prolific, and I thought, oh my gosh, that just gave me a lot of energy. Perfect. And so for me, sorry, I don't remember everyone, but I go back to
no, but I think it's the point.
But for me, and I knew what this woman was writing about, and so. For me, the apathy, like I said, for me, it's changing the criteria. I keep feeling like I'm growing.
Yeah.
I'll explain another area that you've helped me a lot in growing, Jonelle, is one of the things, the word you use a lot is this idea of centering.
Yeah.
Are we centering our whiteness, or are we including all voices? And so a friend of mine who's extremely involved in diversity, inclusion, she realized that all of her stories that she has given her kids are stories of marginalized people rather than white women that helped out.
Okay.
And so we were having a conversation.
Yeah.
And I felt a little uncomfortable with the conversation because it almost felt like she was going back to this space of centering whiteness as opposed to inclusion. Now, this is not her intention.
Confused.
So
you said she was only centering people of color.
She was, but now she realized she never had told stories
so now
of people that uplifted other white
but it's
voices.
as we're talking about,
but it's a balance, and so
everything is a balance.
But I was able to have this conversation with her about lifting voices. If they're white voices that have allied and walked alongside people, then that's the stories we want to share. But we don't want to just center our white Eurocentric way of doing things as the only thing is
on
right.
The podcast, the only my only baseline of centering is I center women, trans women, women, any women of color. That is my centering.
And not to
but it doesn't mean
exclusion of men.
No,
you're just trying to
uplift. Yes,
and there's an audience. Anyway, so I think for me, back to this apathy, the reason I'm not feeling burnt out right now, but we will have these, is I've changed my criteria and I keep hearing how I'm growing.
Yes.
So if my story was about a story of numbers or a story of like converting or all that, then it's not really working.
And I think,
and yet it's about growth.
But that's what happened to me at the beginning of the summer. It was
you got
numbers.
Into the data.
I got into the data. I got into the numbers. I got into all of that. And then with the time that I was putting into it, it changed my perspective on what created value in this.
Yes.
And I think what's great now I do know, because I did really enjoy writing the blogs, I need to step back into some of that. I need to, again, marketing. There's some things I need to step back into that I understand. But what that freedom then allowed me to do is actually then, like, I had summer, I had a break, but then I came into this fall and I had breadth both in my schedule and in my mind to volunteer.
Yeah.
And so now, and which has been something I've been wanting to do, to volunteer. So I volunteer with making breakfast for the youth shelter. And it's just a great way to also be in a diverse community and be and help. And I don't think I would have gotten there. Well, actually, I know, because this last spring, this opportunity to volunteer with this group came up, and I was so busy and tangled in everything else that I just couldn't feel like I could find the time to do it. And it's not that much time every week, and it really gets me involved.
Maybe
and so
it's about accepting the journey that we're on.
I think this is it.
I was going to say another thing that I think can be challenging is the longer you're, and maybe this is the language of woke and wake or whatever all that means, but the longer we're on this journey of learning.
Yeah.
I remember when we started this podcast, oh my gosh, I hardly ever listened to for some reason, I only listen to like white male podcasts, right? And one of the things I do on Instagram every week is I recommend a podcast centering on a BIPOC female. And oh my gosh, it has just opened my eyes to these bigger stories. Now, as we've journeyed longer on these stories, I'm realizing that some people that are just starting this journey as white women have some less history in it.
Yes.
And so some of the things that I might be saying aren't necessarily connecting with what they're saying.
Okay.
And so some of that is a little bit like, wow, I'm growing. I want other people to be growing with me. But I think it's like being okay with accepting all of us for where we're at. And then just, it's kind of like you wouldn't tell someone, oh, you can't have all this spicy food because you've never been used to spicy food. You might just say, I know, weird analogy.
My analogy was more as like, you wouldn't expect, a 5-month-old baby to be talking.
Yeah.
But like,
okay, maybe that's better. But these babies, we're all in this journey together. And instead of being like judgmental, like, oh, get it together, you should have a wider variety of inclusivity or something like that. But I think that can lend to the apathy.
Yes.
Because you think, oh, I'm doing all this to educate people, and people don't know.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of Black people feel that way.
Yes.
And yet,
which is why we have to help pick up the slack.
We have to pick up the slack.
And
help each other in this journey.
It is funny. It kind of reminds me of, like, you used to always say that when we were younger, my brother and I, we would do homework at the dining room table, and I would always like judge his homework, like, oh, you're just learning that?
Yeah, because
I know how to do that. And you would be like, yeah, you're 2 years older. You should know how to do that.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting how we, like,
forget what we've learned,
yes,
and expect everyone to
have the same perspective. Exactly.
And I think then then we can be apathetic that I'm not going to teach them.
Totally.
I want to go to this space.
Yeah.
When in fact, we're all on this journey together.
At some point, yes.
Yeah.
And so just bringing
and the whole goal is that we unpack our biases and we see what errors that we might be bringing so that we can re-enter the room and re-enter these conversations with health and wholeness.
Yeah.
So anyways, this was off.
That was totally off topic.
Yeah.
No research done, just from our own mind. So I think, but the reflection for this week, I guess, is, where do you find yourself kind of almost becoming apathetic or burnt out on this journey? Are there areas that you can expand, areas that you need to step back without fully stepping back? Because I think, again, the goal is, and this is my goal, front of mind, as a white person, I can exit, but I don't want to exit. And so what are things that I can do, even if I need to step back a little bit, but I'm not exiting out that door? Where can I find the balance so I don't walk out that door and I stay in it? And so I think that's kind of,
because we're needed. We're needed in policy. We're needed in love. We're needed in creating a more holistic, healthy community with each other.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone, so for joining us on White Women Wake Up. We hope today's conversation sparks something in you, whether it's reflection, a new question, or a deeper commitment to showing up with empathy and accountability. If you find this episode meaningful, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Again, we're your community. Reach out to us. You can also connect on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Substack, or at whitewomenwakeup.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay curious, be open, and keep waking up. Bye. We're in the frame. In the other one, I was like, I'm like, dang it, of course.
You were excited. Okay.